Yueling Restaurant is the most popular tavern in the capital city. It is rumored that the owner of his family has been living a luxurious life for 19 years, enjoying all the glory and wealth, but now it has fallen into the market of washing utensils. The business of merchants is truly heartbreaking. To relieve hatred. The sixth princess of the current dynasty said, former county lord, the former emperor's lackey, bullied my second brother for many years. She deserves to sell wine and apologize, and endure all the hardships. The fourth prince of the dynasty said, the act of treacherous merchants is a foul smell. No wonder my second prince detested it. The landlady Lu Xiling, who came from the womb, said. With the system in hand, I have delicious food, and all the banquets from ancient and modern times are for my use, ham elbow taro chicken, pearl milk tea bird's nest soup, Qianhong Yidong Wanyan Tongcup, making a small profit with soft hands, and also teasing the street young man. Take a look at how we live our little days, don't be too carefree and happy. The people of Kyushu smelled the smell and caught a glimpse of the dragon sons and daughters slapping their faces, almost startling their chins. Is the sixth princess with a greedy expression on her face? Is it the fourth prince who wrote a poem while drinking by the wall? Is the third prince focused on cooking? Wait, the person in the kitchen who brushes dishes and picks vegetables seems to be the second prince who makes the people of northern Xinjiang tremble with fear upon hearing this. Former husband's second prince Bai Yan humbly proposed to remarry. Keywords of the novel. Jinghua Little Kitchen Girl No Pop-Ups, Jinghua Little Kitchen Girl TXT Complete Collection Download, Jinghua Little Kitchen Girl Latest Chapter Reading. Chapter 1. Out of the Palace. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Out of the Palace, Coming Out. Holy Mercy. Woo-woo. Auntie. The flowers are warm and the water is warm, and the greenery is returning to its nest. The capital, which has just started spring, has a new look. In front of the vermilion bird gate, the Wu Yang Yidong female slaves consciously lined up in a long queue, waiting for the official Shi to issue cards and let them pass. Lu Xiling also stood in the queue. Now that the world has changed its surname to Bai, the new emperor has taken a different approach, overthrowing the old system, granting amnesty to the world, exempting spring taxes, and reducing prison sentences. A few days ago, a new edict was issued, allowing the old officials to be dismissed from the harem and releasing the female slaves in Yidong. Looking back at the once indestructible cage, Lu Xiling remained calm on her face and felt a hint of Gatling's big grin in her heart. 19 years. She can finally go out. System. Sign in. Chen Shi has arrived, and Lu Xiling decisively awakens the electronic sounds in her brain. Ding. Checking in now, ding. Congratulations to the head chef for completing the 6,922nd check.in and activating the food system. The flickering electronic screen instantly rolled up, and the gluttonous recipes from ancient and modern times, both at home and abroad, were displayed before her eyes without reservation. Lu Xiling in front of the screen drooled with relief. In her previous life, she carried a system and collected recipes from all over the world, known as the king of the culinary world. Who would have thought that the heavens would make a fool of her with a pot, only to study a new dish and prepare to kill her opponent, and accidentally dress up as an orphan of an ancient aristocratic family. Not only that, she was also forced to marry by decree and became the proton lady for 3 years. Lu Xiling caressed He Lishu in her arms. She's the next one. Wait a moment. The guard at the palace gate blocked her way. Lu Xiling looked at the armored guards and thought they were probably from the Forbidden Army, but the first 2 years of training for the Forbidden Army were weak and slippery, with little caution and solemnity compared to those in front of her. With a moment's thought, she understood that this was the person of the new emperor. Which palace are you from? Lu Xiling smiled pleasantly and said, my daughter is from Xinqiang Palace. The guard at the gate was not familiar with the inner palace and looked up and down at the people. The order received by the Forbidden Army was to distribute clearance documents to the female slaves in Yidong, without mentioning the need to verify their origins, let alone inquire about their future whereabouts. However, no wonder he was too meddling. After all, the difference between the smiling girl in front of him and the others was too great. Palace maids and maidservants have a higher rate than livestock production. There are few in the team who have served the late emperor and can still see through, while the rest are mostly hunchbacked, with a yellow and thin face. When talking to him, one can immediately hear the skillful energy emanating from being immersed in the harem. Look at this one in front of you again. Her hands are like soft catkins, her skin is like condensed fat, and her almond eyes are curved like the new green mountains of spring. If she were taller and taller again, she could be called a beauty even more beautiful than the empress of her ancestors. Lu Xiling didn't realize that she had become a suspect in the eyes of the royal guard, but she still had a good temper and said, "Your Majesty knows clearly, I am indeed not a Yidong female slave." "Who is that?" The guard clenched the handle of the knife. As soon as the words fell, a distant whistle sounded, and the guards didn't have time to ask more questions. They quickly directed the crowd to avoid it. As soon as Lu Xiling stepped into the safety zone, she saw 3 fiery red horses galloping towards her, riding heavily on thunderous horses behind her, raising spring snow all over the ground. What kind of person is this? Such a big battle. Such a handsome gentleman. Can't even recognize it. The first one is second prince, the proton who was trapped in the imperial city by the late emperor in the early years. Following him are third prince and fourth prince. Proton. Isn't it the former commander-in-chief of the imperial guards who brought the queen's niece to the front to report? Shoo. The gossip palace maid quickly shut her mouth. Lu Xiling hid in the crowd, her face turning pale as she listened. She waited for only flying swallows and clouds to remain on the central axis before daring to pull away the broken hair blocking in front of her. 3 years ago, the late emperor feared that the wings of the King of Yu were too plump, and feared that after killing the King of Yu, there would be no one to defend against. Therefore, he believed in the slander of demons and imprisoned the second son of the Bai family, Bai Yi, in the imperial city. He also betrothed himself to him. In those years, she did everything that the other person disliked in order to get along with Li, and the lies she fabricated almost ruined Bai Ye's reputation. Now that their family has taken control of the imperial city, they should have washed away all their shame, but Bai Yi not only didn't mention the past grievances, but also happily signed and left the letter, which really scared her. So last night, while Bai Yi was still worshipping in Songshan, she packed her bags and left overnight. Your Majesty has an order to release it as soon as possible without delaying the time of the heavenly sacrifice. Your Majesty has an order. In a moment of trance, the drums roared, and the sound of military orders poured down like mountains and seas. The gatekeeper dared not delay any longer and accelerated his pace to pass. Lu Xiling once again basked in the skylight and slightly blessed the guards who had just blocked her way, stepping out of the imperial city with one foot. Keep going south along Beda Street and turn a corner to find the most famous food street in the capital. Lu Xiling happily browsed around the rows of food shops. Sheep soup hu cake, sesame fried cake, chicken soup shrimp, and various street-side snacks surpass countless palace delicacies. Lu Xiling took a deep breath of soothing fireworks. This is the way people live. Thinking of living, Lu Xiling thought of a plan that had been on her mind for 19 years. Her culinary skills are unparalleled, and the recipes enhanced by her system are unparalleled in ancient and modern times. If she can return to her old business and open a wine shop, the wealthy side is just around the corner. Returning to reality, the prerequisite for opening a tavern is having capital, and on the surface, she is a noble girl with a hairpin and tassel raised in a deep boudoir, but behind her back, she is a girl who eats dirt. Passing through the entrance of Beda Street, Lu Xiling's heart was filled with sourness. Do you want to stay in a hotel or get a tip? Just now, she came all the way to compare prices, and this one is already the best value for money in the capital. However, she needs to stay in a hotel and also stay for a long time. After calculating this, she is now shy. What's even more frustrating is that when she first called out to the system, she realized that the recipes had all returned, but they were all in an unlocked state. That is to say, even though she has been diligently repairing her clock for 19 years, it still only activates its culinary attributes, and the recipe still needs to be unlocked separately. Oh my God, my dream of becoming rich overnight is shattered. Take a look, just out of the pot, the sauce cake, jujube paste cake, and osmanthus cake are not delicious and free of charge. Noon has passed, and Lu Xiling's sourness is gradually fading away, leaving only the feeling of hunger in her cells. By a stroke of fate, Lu Xiling walked to the door of the fruit shop and unconsciously swallowed her saliva. This taste is too fragrant. The fragrance is so fragrant that one cannot move their legs or feet. How do you sell this cake? The little girl with an apron tied around her waist looked up and glanced at each person. Originally, it was just to attract customers and shout casually. At this moment, when someone came over and didn't know how to get started, they knew it was just hooking up to grab free food. What kind of fruit do you want, Mississippi? 3-1 for the thicket cake, 4-1 for the jujube paste cake, and 5-1 for the osmanthus cake. It should be priced based on the ingredients, and this price range is quite reasonable. Although Lu Xiling is not wealthy, she still has the money to eat a piece of cake. But then I thought of tightening my belt and staying at the store first. Lu Xiling gritted her teeth. The wicked system, when she gets rich, she must seize the upper hand with money. New book seeking collection and comments, end of this chapter. Chapter 2. Milk Date Cake. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2 Milk Date Cake. While Lu Xiling was drooling over the fruit, the little girl had already turned around and returned to the shop cursing. When she returned, she held out a tray of freshly baked pastries with one hand. The four sides of the steamer were steaming hot, and before the lid was opened, all of Lu Xiling's internal organs were stirred up by the aroma. Is this about hoping for plum blossoms to quench thirst? Lu Xiling gently rubbed her withered stomach, and then she tilted her head to see the sign that the little girl was holding in her other hand. Recruitment. And the four prominent characters following it. Full accommodation and meals. Is your shop hiring people? Lu Xiling regretted it just as she spoke. Just now, I didn't notice that there were still blue and red fingerprints on this person's left face. Did you just get beaten inside? Is it so difficult to get along with the food shop owner? Will you also hit her for no reason in the future? In ancient times, there was no labor protection law to protect the rights and interests of migrant workers. Lu Xiling pondered and saw that the other party did not answer immediately, so she decided not to turn her head and pretended to look at the street view. I don't know if the little girl was just beaten and had lingering palpitations. After hesitating for a while, she saw that no one was interested in the fruit stall, so she took her to meet the landlady. The landlady's surname is Hu, and the little girl calls her Hu Nyang. Unlike the mischievous woman in her imagination, this Hu Nyang does not have the triangular eyes and hooked nose of a profiteer. She appears to be only in her early 30s, with an oval face and willow eyebrows. Her every move and gesture is less business and more martial arts. When Lu Xiling was taken to the backyard, she was eating lunch in the main room with her feet crossed. Due to her profession, Lu Xiling finally breathed a sigh of relief and habitually glanced at the food. The soup in the cup is undoubtedly lamb soup. It's just that the original lamb soup emphasizes a clear and mellow base, ensuring no astringency or fishy smell when consumed. However, the bowl in Hu Nyang's hand has a cloudy color, clearly with added red oil. Looking at the red oil adorned with green leaves that are as round as pig ears, it should be sunflowers. Lu Xiling smiled slightly and said, "Is the landlady from Sichuan? This winter amaranth is not common in Beijing." The little girl gave a quick glance and quickly lowered her head. Surprisingly, do you recognize amaranth? I have been in the capital for over 10 years and have eaten it quite a bit. Not many people know it. The little girl is usually greedy, so she naturally pays more attention than others, Lu Xiling replied. Oh. Are you also from Sichuan? The landlady thought she had met her fellow townsman, but finally she was willing to look up at the person in front of her. Her cheeks were frozen with fresh lychee, her almond eyes were full of spring, and she smiled a little on her lips without saying a word. In business, it is important to greet people with a smile. A little girl is naturally impeccable in terms of her appearance and physique, but she runs a pastry shop, not a fishing boat. Her beauty alone cannot sustain her for a long time. Looking at her slender arms, legs, waist, and willows, she couldn't even count on her noodles. She was afraid it would take a lot of effort to bring tea and water. Lu Xiling said, the family members of the tribe once lived in Shu, and every time they came back, they would bring some local customs to the younger generation, which allowed the little girl to appreciate many wonderful things in Shu. A person looks wonderful and has a sweet mouth. But doing hard work is not just sweet talk. The new emperor seized the throne under the guise of the Qing dynasty's side and fought all the way from the north. Although they were mainly luring surrender, there were still many families who were in trouble. At present, tens of thousands of refugees are crowding in the city. There are more monks than porridge. One station is released, and many people want to go in. In the past few days, she has seen many fake tricks that she only knows how to say but not do. Hu Ernyang pondered the lessons learned from the past and opened the door to the mountain, saying, I see that the girl looks unfamiliar. If she hadn't come from Sichuan, she would have come from exile in the north. Look at the girl's attire. She used to be not a lady from a wealthy family, nor was she the daughter of a rural farmer. Although our shop mainly deals with morning food, we have to get up and cook vegetables before dawn every day. At night, we also have to mix filling, knead noodles, and cook lard. The hardships involved are beyond the girl's imagination. Is this treating her as a spoiled girl from a destitute aristocratic family? Lu Xiling's experience of dismounting was not only impressive, but Hu Ernyang's cold words were at best a piece of cake. Moreover, as a former colleague, she knew very well that businesspeople were not philanthropists and could not rely on a few sweet words to expect the other party to take her in. But she has confidence in her craftsmanship. And she also caught the boss's mother's unwillingness to spend money in vain. 2 streets away is the largest slave market in the capital. The servants were very cheap. She didn't go there to choose, but chose the most troublesome and secure way, probably to find a skilled white-collar worker who could get started immediately. When Lu Xiling had a good temper, she said, in my early years, my family also ran a restaurant business. I have been helping out in the shop since I was young, and I have been learning the craft with her for a few years. Can you cook? Lu Xiling nodded and said, I have a basic understanding of ordinary meals, pastries, and drinks. As expected, the landlady's expression immediately changed again and again upon hearing this. When the leader entered the kitchen, she was even more surprised than happy, and her eyes lit up. Unlike the girl she imagined pouring oil into the pot and running back. As soon as Lu Xiling rolled up her sleeves in the kitchen, she started drying from the most basic stove. Later on, she picked ingredients, ground them, weighed them, mixed noodles, and mixed fillings, without any help from anyone else. The kitchen is full of costs except for water, so the boss won't let her waste the ingredients until she's clear about her abilities. Therefore, she only selected the most ordinary jujube paste cake to test her skills. The recipe for jujube paste cake is simple, but it's not easy to make. The key to eating is to grind the jujube paste very finely, without any impurities, and control the amount of sugar used. The jujube itself has a sweet taste, too much sugar is too sweet, and too little is not sweet enough. Improper mixing of ingredients can also affect the taste. It's best to take a sip and it's delicate and soft, and the more you chew it, the more fragrant it becomes. The taste is similar to drinking tea. Although tea enters the stomach, it can still taste sweet on the tongue. A delicious pastry should also be like this, it should be irresistible. Lu Xiling was well aware of the intricacies behind it. She took a sharp move and used milk instead of water and flour. With her front foot, she scooped out the dates with a spoon and let them cool. With her back foot, she scooped a spoonful of milk and slowly poured it into the flour clockwise. At first, Hu Ernyang deliberately stood on the edge of the stove without giving any guidance, only watching Lu Xiling busy around. Unexpectedly, she let her use such precious ingredients. That's milk. It was too late to reach out and stop, and Hu Ernyang was so anxious that she jumped up and down. Sheep milk can be seen everywhere in the capital, but milk is not often consumed. This is what she called back from queuing this morning and has not been willing to drink it. Lu Xiling kept moving her hands and said with a smile, "Boss, don't worry. If you can't do this meal well, I'll compensate the boss." Hu Ernyang also understood the truth that things have come to this point, but still gritted her lips unwillingly and urged, "Do you know how much this bowl costs? You dare to speak cold words even when you are too busy." Lu Xiling smiled but remained silent. Hu Ernyang gave a white glance and leaned against the pillar dejectedly, but after a while, she was attracted again. Also attracted together were the little girls in the shop. "This hand is really clever." The little girl beside her had long forgotten the pain on her face, and her eyes were mesmerized by Lu Xiling's flowing movements. "It's like this person hasn't just done it in their hometown, but has done it countless times." Originally, in order to save trouble, Hu Ernyang would put the mixed batter directly into a good-looking mold, and after it was steamed, she would pull it over and let it cool to take out of the pot. However, Lu Xiling was not in a hurry to put the batter on the pot. Instead, she found a bamboo stick from the straw pile in the backyard and bent down to outline it on the batter. Hu Ernyang and the little girl approached curiously, and at the moment they saw the batter, they all shouted in unison, "Be good." I have only heard of the skilled hand of painting ink on paper and silk, and for the first time I have seen a restaurant chef who can paint on batter. Especially for the little girl who had never seen the world before, seeing such a skill, her eyes widened in surprise, and her chin was almost unable to close. In the end, my eyes were almost too beautiful to open. The pastry that was first placed in the pot had already wafted out its flavor, and the little girl couldn't help but feel intoxicated and said, "It's so fragrant. It's 100 times more fragrant than our pastry." As soon as she spoke, the little girl immediately glanced soberly at Hu Ernyang beside her. Seeing that she was also intoxicated by the sweet and greasy taste, she finally felt at ease. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Selling Flour Cake. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Selling Flour Cake. Half an hour later, the pastry came out of the pot. Lu Xiling wiped away the fine sweat from her forehead and casually grabbed a handful of white sesame seeds and sprinkled them on top. "It's been a long time since I've been so busy living, it's really a bit unfamiliar." The key point is that there was no cooking machine in ancient times, which really made it difficult for her. "Is that all right now?" As soon as she spoke, the landlady felt confused. She had been making jujube paste cakes for over a decade, but couldn't tell if they were good or not. She sneered at herself and picked up a bamboo chopsticks to pick up a piece and examine it. The selection of dishes emphasizes a comprehensive combination of color, aroma, and flavor. The pastry in front of us has a bright red color, with a fragrant aroma of red dates. The auspicious cloud patterns on the pastry surface are even more pleasing to the eye. Following the direction of the fragrance drifting away, the little girl next to her was almost crying. The landlady pretended to be reserved and took the first bite, which melted in her mouth and was sweet but not greasy. When she bit it off, it seemed like she was still carrying some sugar shreds. The second bite has a rich and distinct taste, with a lingering fragrance on the lips and teeth, almost perfect. Even so, it far surpasses her craftsmanship that she has been doing for over a decade. Without any extra thoughts, Hu Ernyang almost eagerly swallowed the last bite and squinted her eyes with satisfaction. Lu Xiling took off her apron and poured water for Hu Ernyang. She turned her head and saw the little girl standing on the side, staring blankly. She walked up to her with a pastry and shook it. The little girl in the master's house dared not act casually. She glanced several times to the left and couldn't help but take action when she saw someone eating with great interest and couldn't manage anything else. Different from Hu Ernyang, the little girl didn't care about eating and face at all. She just put her nose on the tip of her nose and smelled it, and then she took it in with her mouth. It's quite like Zhu Beiji eats ginseng fruit. Eat slowly, no one will compete with you. Lu Xiling helped people pat their backs and let out a sigh. The little girl covered her mouth as if she hadn't heard it, afraid that someone might take it out again. At that time, many guests had already gathered in front of the booth outside the house. As the three of them were all in the kitchen, Lu Xiling tried her hand again and used her own method to make jujube cake. As soon as the cake was out of the pot, milk accompanied by the mixed aroma of red dates wafted out. The aunt who was selling flowers next door smelled the smell and lifted the curtain to remind her. She received a piece of jujube cake as a thank you gift and happily pulled Hu Ernyang out. Hu Ernyang lay on the window crack in the direction of her fingers and looked out. She saw that the stall was indeed different from usual, with a long queue. In an instant, she understood why these diners came. After answering the guests correctly, Hu Ernyang kept folding back to the kitchen. The little girl was standing by the stove eating hard when she suddenly received a slap on the top of her head. Eat and eat. You know how to eat. Look at them. Without any reason, she was beaten again, and the little girl quickly covered her mouth and walked away. Hu Ernyang glared at the back of the person fiercely, and then kindly picked up Lu Xiling's hand. Good girl, I don't know what your name is yet. Lu Xiling was so tired that she froze and forgot to answer for a moment. What's going on? Making the girl difficult. Of course there is no difficulty. Before marriage, she lost her trust and was raised as a county lord by the empress. After marriage, she was the nominal wife of the Bai family. Not only in the folk, but also in the palace, few people know her real name. Lu Xiling, who had regained her senses, said calmly, my last name is Lu and my name is Xiling. Just call me Ao Ling, the boss's wife. Alright, Alan, the jujube paste cake you made is even better than what I've been making for over a decade. The landlady clapped the board and said, from tomorrow on, you'll have to do this alone. This is a promise. Having successfully secured this job, there was no need to worry about food and accommodation. In order to thank the boss, Lu Xiling went to help shout a few more times before the stall was closed, all as if she had opened her voice in advance. The little lady is beautiful and attractive, and she has attracted many customers at the evening stall. The pastries are selling much faster than usual. The landlady's mood brightened up, and after settling in with Lu Xiling, she gave the two of them an early leave. The little girl, as her name suggests, is called Duya. At this moment, there were 100,000 people who were unwilling to let Lu Xiling in. However, upon hearing this, she took a short rest for a while and ran out for a walk. Lu Xiling didn't have much luggage, so when she retrieved the blanket and cotton towel from Hu Ernyang, she packed everything up and was ready to take a stroll around the capital before curfew. But when I think of the frustrating system and the arm that couldn't be lifted, I still decided to stay inside and lie down. After a little research, Lu Xiling realized that she had been overly optimistic before. To fully open the ancient and modern Chinese and foreign cuisine record, you must complete the system requirement, which means that you must replicate the unlocked recipe at least once. Turning on the screen, Lu Xiling looked at her first recipe. Steamed chicken with astragalus. This dish is a big tonic. In addition to astragalus membranaceus, which nourishes qi and detoxifies, it also contains many traditional Chinese medicine ingredients such as goji berries, tangerine peel, lily, yam, and poria cocos. Just the huangqi inside is quite expensive. Right at this moment, Lu Xiling in front of the screen not only felt a headache, but also a pain in her flesh. What is the use of activating the system? If there are not enough ingredients to replicate dishes, it cannot be upgraded. I thought that she could do whatever she wanted with the money in her pocket today, but the system was not awesome. I yawned. Just like her, she simply left tomorrow's troubles for tomorrow. A good night's sleep. The next day before dawn, the food street was already bustling with traffic and crowds. Officials, slaves, and merchants shuttled through the streets and alleys, wearing stars and moons. Breakfast stalls are even the busiest in terms of daily customer traffic. Anyone who is a hardworking food shop owner, who wouldn't rush to open the door and make money at this time. The beauty fruit shop is no exception. Just today, in addition to the hasty bean sprouts and vegetables, there was also a charming little girl at the door. It's still early now. Why are you coming out? Hurry up and go back to your room and sleep for a while. The little girl pushed Lu Xiling hard, but she ignored her and ran back and forth between the front hall and the back kitchen of the shop. In front of the fireworks-filled stall, Lu Xiling was wearing a moon-white shirt with a gray-blue long skirt underneath. This was the one she often wore while cooking in the mansion, and now it fits perfectly. Even wearing such an ordinary dress on a fair and beautiful woman is very eye-catching. Therefore, most of the people who came this morning to buy cakes were husbands. Which boss is the girl from? Why haven't you seen her before? Lu Xiling neatly picked up a piece of thicket cake and a piece of jujube paste cake, covered with an oilcloth on top and supported with sticky leaves on the bottom. I'm not the boss. Could you please pay 10 yuan? If it's not the boss, then it's just a buddy. If it's a buddy, it's unfair to the girl. Would you like to come see me, girl? I can give you this number. Facing 5 fingers as thick as a large intestine, Lu Xiling smiled slightly and reached out for money. The man who spoke up saw that people were not swayed by gold and silver, and realized that he was asking for trouble. He took the sticky leaves and left. Lu Xiling continued to be busy living and working in her hands. In front of her was a table with a dough-cutting board. On one side was a pot of old noodles covered with cotton cloth, and on the other side was a neat row of celadone bowls filled with ingredients such as red date paste, white sugar, milk, and eggs. As soon as diners walk by, they can see the process of making jujube paste cake. I saw the little girl's jade hands, like green onions, picking up a long chopsticks and gently stirring the flour into a flocculent shape. Her right index finger lightly tapped the egg, and the egg white and yolk flowed down together. Then, with a casual shake of her hand, the eggshell was thrown into the small bamboo basket on the side of the stall. At first, some people were just attracted by the beautiful technique of the little girl, but unexpectedly stopped for a long time, waiting for the fragrance to come out and involuntarily took out their wallets. How much is jujube paste cake? 6 yuan coins. Those who have tasted it all know that this is a price increase, but today they have determined that real ingredients have been added inside, and the little girl's fingers are green and white clean, unlike the disgusting mess of the nearby snack stall. They don't know what seasoning is used behind the scenes, and even if it's more expensive, they recognize it. After taking the glutinous leaves, some people couldn't wait to taste them, so they took advantage of the heat and ate them happily. Hey yo, after taking one bite, it's sweet and soft, with a fragrant aftertaste. Not only can you feel the layering of milk and red dates, but when chewing, it also feels more fluffy than before, it's like eating air. The diner was momentarily stunned, then burst into a hearty smile. Miss, you're really interesting. Is it air, or sweet air? Before the fruit shop, there was a flood of positive reviews, and more people gathered around. The little girl squatting on the ground pouted unwillingly. I have never had a husband buy so many pastries before at this time. Why did you sell so many as soon as you arrived? If Hu Enyang sees you like this, I will be despised by her again. Why? Lu Xiling curved her eyes as she looked at the 13 or 14-year-old girl. Perhaps the facial features are greater than the three senses. Dia didn't know what the 3-5 views were, she just lowered her head and felt suffocated. Dia was bought by Hu Enyang from the slave market. The little girl had dark skin and a pair of cobalt blue eyes that were particularly bright. At first glance, she was not a local. For her, working at a fruit shop was like being sold from one small cage to another, and fortunately, the hostess on the stall this time was a woman with a sharp mouth and a heart full of tofu. In her daily life, she is lazy and slippery, and inevitably gets scolded and beaten. However, although Hu Enyang always threatens her to sell her if she doesn't work hard again, she never buys a little slave again from beginning to end. But now it's different. Since Lu Xiling entered the door, Hu Enyang didn't close her mouth yesterday. She first arranged a room that was even cleaner and more spacious than her room, and then gave Lu Xiling and herself the same wages. She worked for 3 years to earn 300 yuan a month. As soon as Dia thought that she had brought in a fairy in a moment of confusion, she couldn't help but slap herself in the mouth. Please give me the monthly pass, my dear children. I really need it. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Pickled and Fresh. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Pickled and Fresh. The bell of the city tower rings, and the Qingtian gate, facing the spring light, is slowly opening. At the beginning of the day for the officials in the court, the Diabolo basket of the beautiful fruit shop had already been stacked half a foot high. Lu Xiling twisted her neck and shouted, "Bean sprouts, go back and bring another pot." "Why am I?" Dia angrily said, "I can't move it. If you don't go, I won't give you anything delicious for a while." "What's delicious?" Dia suddenly widened her eyes. In the morning, she only ate 2 fists of jade-pointed noodles and was feeling emotional inside. Hu Enyang has store rules, and business is best during the hour of the morning and afternoon, so if you want to have a meal, you need to wait until the hour comes. How could this person dare to cook without permission when they work the first day? Dia pouted, "Beautiful women are all liars, isn't this person playing tricks again?" Lu Xiling was amused by the thick and dark workplace that the child had imagined. The osmanthus cake in the steamer is almost sold. If you want to sell it at noon, you need to steam it again. I'll make an extra row for you to eat then. Do you still know how to steam ho-hot cake? Not right. Dia turned around and went to the kitchen, and in an instant, a scream came from her. The diner at the door almost didn't spray Lu Xiling's face. The little girl ran back in surprise and said, "The boss lady steamed 10 pots of flour cake before leaving." Lu Xiling said helplessly, "So don't you plan to move out the flour cake yet?" "Move it. I'll go now and move it all over." Before Dia finished speaking, she ran back to the kitchen, feeling as happy as if a small red flower had finally bloomed on the barren grassland. Selling so much, Hu Enyang must be very happy. When Hu Enyang is happy, maybe she can have an extra bowl of rice tonight. Hu Enyang will indeed be happy. Today, the business in front of his house is the busiest on the entire street. Even the nobles who usually don't like street vendors can't help but want to join in the fun at this moment. As Bai Yi passed by with his followers riding horses, the follower in a blue shirt noticed the movements on the street. "Yesterday, Your Majesty conferred the title of Emperor Qing upon herself after the Heavenly Yuan Festival. Subsequently, an edict was issued to the court, appointing the late Grand Prince as Prince Mingyan, the second Prince Bai Yi as Prince Yongwang, still in charge of the imperial army and affairs in the capital, and the third Prince Bai Shu as Prince Cheng, in charge of the Dali Temple. Fourth Prince Bai Wu is the youngest, but unexpectedly he was appointed as the Prince of Rui and arranged to be reviewed by the cabinet and the Grand Tutor. The favor here does not require any external human intervention. Although they always wanted to speak up for their master as subordinates, seeing that his master always had that indifferent expression on his face, they didn't say much anymore. Ho! What's so delicious? So many people are queuing up to buy it. Bai Yi glanced in the direction of the person's finger and unconsciously tightened his grip on the reins. Osmanthus cake. Jujube paste cake. The servant murmured, with a smile on his lips. I think it's a beauty cake from my subordinates. TSK, the girls in the capital are really not reserved at all. Everyone has a love for beauty, and I don't know if the cake tastes good or not, but the gimmicks are enough. Go buy it back. The attendant was shocked and said, Ah. Bai Yi struck with a sharp eye. The attendant immediately abstained from questioning and didn't dare to ask. He got off his horse and ran to the fruit stall. Halfway up, something suddenly came to mind, and he quickly turned around with a skeptical expression and asked, How much does your highness want to buy? All. Does this mean it's rounded? The attendant was taken aback and immediately rushed towards the crowd without delay. He stood in line, suspecting whether his master had fallen asleep in his former residence last night. Once in Dibei, his family leader drank blood and ran wild, slaughtering tiger intestines, snake bile, wolf liver, sheep lungs, and even swallowing blood and meat without any harm. But that was before. In these years of not seeing each other, the master's appetite has become increasingly difficult. Even if it is the imperial cuisine offered by the Shangshi Bureau, he can only coldly comment, this dish is too light, that dish is too salty, this soup is extremely fishy, and dogs don't even drink it. Not to mention the vulgar snacks outside. As it was almost time, the crowd in the distance finally dispersed in a noisy manner, and the attendants rushed back with bags full of fruits. The girl who sells cakes said that's all we have left at the moment, so I bought them all. Bai Yi didn't even look at it, so he picked up one and stuffed it into his mouth, grabbed his horse's belly, and left. After a moment, he only heard the command from the person in front without looking back, take it back and give it to the imperial guards who were on duty last night. The attendant was like a monk who couldn't figure it out, and when he saw someone walking away, he quickly mounted his horse and followed them. Business is booming today, selling quickly and in large quantities. Lu Xiling does what she says and won't deceive children, but children may already be tired of eating osmanthus cake. She touched her chin and looked at the ingredients in the kitchen. Shredded bamboo shoots, cured meat, seasonal fresh vegetables on the ground, and some rice, noodles, and dry food. With a flash of inspiration, Lu Xiling estimated that she could still make a simple version of pickled duck for the little girl to taste. What is pickled and fresh? Duya asked. Lu Xiling smiled and sold a trick. Pickled du xian is a seasonal dish in Jiangnan, and it is normal for the little girl not to have eaten it before. Lu Xiling also read it in a book at the beginning. Authentic pickled bamboo shoots are so fresh that they are eaten in early March each year, when the spring shoots are the most tender. There was no clay pot in the kitchen, so Lu Xiling washed the bowl with a large face and brought a small piece of spring bamboo shoots, cured meat, and fresh meat. Lu Xiling had sharp eyes and chose a combination of fat and lean for the fresh meat, otherwise it would be too thin and dry to eat, and too fat could easily ruin a pot of fresh soup. Cutting open against the center of the spring bamboo shoot, Lu Xiling peeled off the deep red skin of the shoot while talking about the culinary classics. Put ham on top of spring bamboo shoots, then add cured meat and fresh meat. If you like light, you can also add lettuce and braised pork ribs. If you like fresh meat, you can also add chicken, glutinous rice chicken, small ribs. After listening to these ingredients, Duya's mouth watered with envy before it even started to eat. What kind of family can afford to eat this? There's so much food to put in. How much? I haven't said anything more complicated yet, Lu Xiling whispered. At present, there is a pitiful shortage of ingredients. What kind of ham and blinds can only be imagined out of thin air. Lu Xiling dare not spoil the taste with other ingredients, so she has to cut the remaining tofu into small pieces and sprinkle them in for freshness. Duya is still young, and it's time for her body to grow. If she can't eat enough, what should she do? After a moment of consideration, Lu Xiling added another strand of noodles. Open the lid, the soup is thick with white juice, the meat is crispy and fat, and the spring bamboo shoots are fragrant, crispy, tender, and white tofu is floating on top, bubbling with heat. Bean sprouts roamed back and forth around the stove like bees in a flower cluster. Lu Xiling chuckled and said, "Don't worry, don't worry. You can't eat hot tofu if you're anxious." Duya said urgently, "What hot tofu, cold tofu, what you eat in your mouth is my tofu." After the soup and dishes were served, Lu Xiling filled a full bowl and served it to the child. Duya's lips were almost purple from biting, and finally he could eat it. He couldn't control it anymore and immediately buried his head in trembling. Lu Xiling leaned on her chin and smiled as she looked, "It's just a young person who has a good appetite. Fortunately, I wasn't hungry, otherwise I wouldn't have been able to grab her. Eat slowly, it's all yours, no one is arguing with you." Duya coughed twice in embarrassment. She still sneers at good-looking women, but when it comes to delicious food, she can be forgiven for a while. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Expanding Business. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Expanding Business. That night, Hu Ernyang came back with a face pulled. Duya saw someone enter the house and ran over excitedly with a ledger, intending to surprise Hu Ernyang. Unexpectedly, the surprise didn't come, and two mouths were waiting. When the clamor of scolding reached the backyard, Lu Xiling was sliding an electronic screen in the room. "I didn't realize there was a treasure chest on top of this before. What's inside?" In the recipe, there is a symbol of a treasure chest between each of the 5 dishes. The treasure chest is golden all over, shining on the blue screen, making people itch. Lu Xiling playfully tapped, imagining that inside was a house, a car, a beautiful man. The girl's face showed a sly smile. "You idiot. If you do something, you'll forget everything. I told you to prepare all the ingredients today, why can't you remember?" Woo 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 woo. The beauty sighed and waved her hand to retract the system. "You get what you pay for, and sound insulation is not good in areas where you don't spend money." Lu Xiling pretended to come to the front hall to drink water and caught a glimpse of Duya, who was kneeling on the ground to repent, and Hu Ernyang on the chair. Hu Ernyang's face was dark and heavy, her chest heaving up and down, like a hellish Rakshasa who came to the mortal world to seek her life. She helped Hu Ernyang earn 3 times more profits today than usual, and her shoulder was sore. How could this person remain indifferent? Ernyang has returned. Without hitting the smiling person, Lu Xiling smiled and leaned towards Hu Ernyang. Although the time spent with this new boss is still short, she has been living in the palace since childhood and has long been accustomed to observing her behavior. She can still handle the ghosts and snakes, and the common people are no exception. Moreover, Hu Ernyang is very observant, and her emotions are written on her face. Lu Xiling obediently handed someone a cup of hot water. "Ernyang, drink some hot water to smooth the flow." Hu Ernyang gave birth to a pair of extremely beautiful phoenix eyes. Even when she was angry, it seemed like she could pull out a peach blossom red romance. Coupled with her delicate and graceful figure, Lu Xiling not only did not fear, but also felt a touch of pity when I saw her. Hu Ernyang took the tea cup and drank it all in one gulp, covering her chest and angrily scolding, "Look at what this girl has done." The ledger was slammed onto the table with a bang. Lu Xiling smiled and picked it up, holding it in her hand and examining it carefully. The characters are a bit rough, but ancient Chinese is already complex to write. It would be great if a foreign girl could read and break characters. Continuing to look down, it's not wrong to pay out and not wrong to pay in. The details of this batch of red envelopes are well organized, and the amount of money and shares are also clear at a glance. Lu Xiling's gaze slowly scanned downwards and saw the annotation at the end of the ledger. The slender willow leaf eyebrows were lightly raised imperceptibly. Hu Enyang stood up at the right moment and twisted Duya's ear in anger, saying, "I asked you to prepare more osmanthus honey, but you just didn't listen. Tomorrow, someone will come from Lan Yuan, how can I explain it to you? If you can't pay 100 yuan of osmanthus cake, our store won't be able to do business in the future." Lan Yuan is a famous theater in the capital city. Those who are not high-ranking officials or nobles are not allowed to see its full picture. The leader inside is also the top performer in the capital city. The excellent song, Xuanyang Night Moon, played by the soft catkin is not to be heard without spending a lot of money. When the late emperor was extravagant and lustful, Lu Xiling took the opportunity to catch a glimpse of Fang Fei. Duya covered her ears and cried loudly, being lifted up by Hu Enyang. "Good second mother, spare me. It's really not my fault for this, yes, yes." Lu Xiling's right eyelids twitched, and as expected, she heard the other person cry and shout, "It's all because of her. It's because she used up all the osmanthus honey prepared by her maid today, it's all her fault. Okay, I was planning to come over and block the gun for my teammate, but I didn't expect to be stabbed in the back by my teammate." Lu Xiling was infuriated and laughed. "It's just that, who doesn't have a bare child yet?" After all, choosing to give her another chance, Lu Xiling patiently said, "Business is good during the day, so I steamed a lot of osmanthus cake together. Speaking of which, I did not know the rules and secretly moved Nyang's inventory. If Nyang wants to punish me with silver, I will deduct it from my wages. Listen. This is the gap between a lowly maid and a young lady," Hu Enyang thought. But when the other party said this, how could she be so angry? Is it necessary to blame a newcomer for the mistake? That seems quite unreasonable to her. Furthermore, she had read the account book and knew that all the money collected today relied on the little girl's good cooking. It would be unfair for her to punish someone else's money without distinguishing between good and bad ones. Hu Enyang blushed and said, "Those who don't know are not guilty. What do you just understand? It must be this foolish maid who forgot to remind you when she saw that she was selling well." Duya saw Hu Enyang raise her palm, and as soon as she poked out her spring coat, her head nervously shrank back. Lu Xiling quickly reached out to block her and said, "What's the point with Nyang? Even if you beat her to death today, you won't be able to exchange for osmanthus honey. It's better to take advantage of the time we have to think of a solution together." When things got to this point, Hu Enyang naturally understood that beating and scolding couldn't solve the problem, but how could the problem be solved? 100 yuan osmanthus cake, at least 5 pounds of osmanthus honey is needed. There are only 3 pounds left in the kitchen, and at most 70 yuan can be made. Feeling deflated, Hu Enyang shook her hand and collapsed back into her chair, tears streaming down her eyes. Lu Xiling could see that this was a difficult time for small businesses and vendors. It was easy for a large order to fall from the sky, but it was just that it had been eaten by a pig teammate, and there was no way to explain it. To put it simply, I still want to make money. Lu Xiling didn't want to help the person who stabbed the knife get up. She sat across from Hu Enyang with a kind voice and asked sincerely, "Does Enyang really want to make osmanthus cake for a lifetime?" On the ledger, it is clear that her family has been dealing with these 3 types of pastries back and forth over the years. Hu Enyang was surprised. Lu Xiling smiled faintly and said, "After a few days, it will be Shaanxi festival. After Shaanxi, it will immediately be Cold Food and Qingming festival. In the future, there will also be Yufo, Dragon Boat Festival, Mid-Autumn Festival. Our family only makes osmanthus cake, and we will suffer great losses in the future." She couldn't understand why Sichuan spicy girls wanted to open a fruit shop, but even fruit shops were not very attractive. How can she ruin every inch of land in the capital? Lu Xiling decided to roll her up and said with a smile, "In my opinion, our family should research some new types of pastries. Even if they are not new, we should add more categories. With more types, we can do a wider range of business. Upon hearing that it was related to money, Hu Enyang's phoenix eyes were slightly round and half of her body leaned in. Seeing the ignorance in the woman's eyes, Lu Xiling is speechless. She has been in the industry for more than 10 years, why is she still a novice? Lu Xiling patiently explained one by one, starting with the types. We can make hibiscus cake, white jade cake, horseshoe cake, 5-color cake, and 5 blessings cake. Then we can make beautiful daughter cakes on Shaanxi Festival, prepare fancy green dumplings on Qingming Festival, make moon cakes on Mid-Autumn Festival and fruit dumplings on Dragon Boat Festival. As for the location, we don't have to be limited to the front of the shop. There are 3 people in our store now, and the booth is a small cart, so we can go wherever it is lively. If we manage like this, as long as we are willing to contribute, are you still afraid that we won't have the money to invest in the future? Saying that, landing in Xiling pushed someone, Hu Enyang withdrew from her vision and sat dumbfounded for a while, only to realize after a while that it was indeed such a reasonable thing. Who doesn't like a profitable business? The two of them hit it off at once, and Hu Enyang immediately felt a sense of unease in her heart. Isn't it just a list from Orchid Garden? Last time, the baker also said that the first time it was just a try. If someone eats poorly, isn't it still not possible? If you don't answer, then don't answer. No way. Lu Xiling said seriously, craftsmanship is certainly important, and reputation cannot be careless. Orchid Garden plays a crucial role in the capital. We would rather suffer losses ourselves than offend them. What should we do then? Has the beautiful fantasy been shattered like this? Hu Enyang had a delicate face drooping. Lu Xiling confidently said, "It doesn't matter, isn't it me? Thank you for the recommended ticket sent by the book friend 20200403175505171. New book seeking collection, end of this chapter." Chapter 6. Lotus Cake. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Lotus Cake. Osmanthus cake should be made, but the deposit needs to be refunded to them, said Lu Xiling. Hu Enyang's face, which was stirred by Lu Xiling that night, turned red and white at times. One moment, she looked confident, and the next moment, she was actually asked to spit out money. Lu Xiling smiled and said, "Don't worry, I promise they'll give us the money again, and it's only a lot more." Hu Enyang once said that the pastries ordered by Lan Yuan are all prepared for the chieftain and the nobles. Coincidentally, Lu Xiling is too familiar with the taste of the nobles. Growing up in the palace since childhood, he participated in countless banquets, where aristocratic officials always enjoyed whatever they liked to eat, and the food bureau would do it. Lu Xiling brought a large bowl and greeted, "Bean sprouts, come and knock eggs." The little girl reluctantly walked to the stove. "It's just knocking eggs, it's not difficult." Lu Xiling smiled knowingly, "But that's knocking one. What if we have to knock dozens? Do you still need to stir evenly after knocking? Mixing this thing is the most challenging for her arms, and this step alone is even more difficult for her. Even if it's a punishment for the little girl who dumped her to take the blame. Is there anything I can help with?" Hu Enyang was pushed aside by Lu Xiling as soon as she tied her apron. "It's not that she's polite, but there's really nothing she can do for now." When Dia knocked the eggs, Lu Xiling cooked a large pot of water for later use. When the water was cooked, the eggs were almost beaten. Lu Xiling raised her eyebrows and nodded frequently, wondering whether she was a foreign girl. Her strength was immense, and her eggs were stirred delicately. Turning to the counter to knead the dough, Hu Enyang was pleasantly surprised as she watched the flour quickly blend into a dough under her delicate jade hands. With a forward and backward pressure, she then rolled her rolling pin and the dough spread out into a pancake shape. At this point, the aroma of egg milk has already drifted out. Hu Enyang looked at Xiling as if she had obtained a precious treasure. She picked up a small brush and brushed a layer of oil on the dough, and the golden color immediately turned oily. After a moment, I changed my hand to a kitchen knife and cut several straight lines on the pancake, cutting it into a noodle shape. "Bean sprouts, add firewood," said Lu Xiling. Has this person become addicted to being summoned? Dia dared not show her temper in front of Hu Ernyang, but instead forced her sore arm to swallow her anger and let out a gentle flame. Hu Ernyang looked at it, and with a slight contrast, she became even more disdainful of the foolish maid. But she just thought for a moment, and when the sizzling sound from the oil pot came out, she couldn't bear to be distracted anymore. "It smells so good." Lu Xiling chuckled lightly, her eyes not daring to leave the frying pan for a moment. The most feared thing about fried food is that if it is too deep fried, it will lose its fragrance. In fact, if the landlady likes it, they may not have to drink congee and eat Yujian noodles one day. Fried mushrooms, fried chicken legs, fried okra, fried shrimp, fried oyster yolks. Deep fry everything and brush with a secret spicy sauce. Lu Xiling pursed her greedy lips and smiled in her heart. She didn't know whether they would accept the fried stinky tofu. Take out the noodles and boil the syrup in another pot. 1 spoonful and 2 spoonfuls are not enough. Many officials in this dynasty like sweet food, and Lu Xiling has become accustomed to it over the years. Hu Ernyang felt heartbroken. Where is sugar in the pot? It's clearly silver with white flowers. Hu Ernyang swallowed her saliva and comforted herself, saying, "We can all make it back, we can all make it back." What kind of dim sum is this? It's so sweet and fragrant. More fragrant than your jujube cake. Lotus cake, said Lu Xiling. In fact, it is similar to sakama in later generations. But where is this going? The bare hibiscus cake was pressed flat in a mold and allowed to cool, without any raisins or cranberries to enhance its flavor. Even the white sesame seeds embellished by Hu Ernyang couldn't bear to part with it. It's just too much of a deal. But I didn't expect her to easily show her hand and devour the ancient indigenous people. Hu Ernyang and Duya were like two children who couldn't eat sugar, eagerly looking at the mold. Lu Xiling said tactfully, "Let's taste the leftover materials that will be cut out later. I don't know the taste of the Lan Yuan guests, so don't send them over and make them look bad." The craving insects in her stomach were about to emerge, and upon hearing these words, Hu Ernyang naturally did not refuse. Watching the two of them with satisfied eating faces and listening to the unreserved praise from the indigenous people, Lu Xiling became much more optimistic. At least she can be certain that even without using the food orders in the system, she seems to be able to make money. But she remained clear-headed, earning small money was not her goal. Weighing the silver in her purse, she now earns 300 yuan per month. If she can make a deal for Ernyang, maybe she can even increase her wages. Calculated at 500 yuan, in the capital, it's only enough to have enough food and clothing. If you want to live well, it's far from enough to have nourishment. If you want to open your own restaurant, it's even more impossible. Lu Xiling's expression shook. No, she has to continue rolling. The next day, the warehouse manager from Lanyuan came to pick up the goods. Hu Ernyang had already memorized Lu Xiling's instructions 100 times in her mind, and she was not hesitant when fighting with others. As soon as the butler left, Hu Ernyang happily left the door. The business in front of the shop gradually stabilized, and Lu Xiling's face became thicker and thicker. He shouted as if he had been in this industry for 800 years. She stopped making jujube paste cake today and instead made hibiscus cake, which not only attracted repeat customers but also attracted many people who dared to eat crabs for the first time. The queue was long and quiet, amidst the noisy bustle of the city. In front of the beauty fruit shop, only when Lu Xiling pressed the mold, could she hear a few sighs of, too fragrant, sweet, and, lucky to be a person. In this world, this statement is equivalent to, worth it in the world. The hibiscus cake came out of the pot, and Lu Xiling smiled happily as she sold the goods and mixed with the customers. The girl is setting up a stall on the street and cooking rare food. Aren't you afraid that we'll learn our craft and go home and make it ourselves? It's okay for us to go back and do it, don't let the other family learn from it. If someone else's house makes an identical one, it will be cheaper than the girl's, and we will all be gone. A circle of people laughed along as they heard it. Lu Xiling also followed with joy. In her eyes, these questions were nothing at all. Lu Xiling said, customers can try them out. Even if someone else makes them, they can buy them back and taste them. I'm sure, customers who have tasted something else will have to come back to me in the end. The surrounding guests were amused by the confident appearance of the little girl, but Dia knew it was not a joke. This morning, the sun was shining in the west, and Hu Ernyang rarely remembered the bamboo shoots at home. She made a pickled and fresh dish similar to Lu Xiling's that day, with the same ingredients, but the taste was completely incomparable to what she had only eaten before. Saying that there is no such thing as heaven and earth. Wait, if these people really go back and try, they will have to hand over the money obediently in less than a day. You have to acknowledge the value. When it comes to being expensive, Lu Xiling really didn't think it was just 1 penny more expensive than jujube paste cake. This is the most famous food street in the capital, adjacent to Zhuke Street, south of the Imperial Palace, north of Luoshui, and west of a high-end residential area. Whether it's the children of the aristocrats or the families of the officials, can this money still be called money in their eyes? After half a day, the fruit shop was filled with pots and bowls of profit. Lu Xiling and Dia tidied up the bottles and jars on the stall, ready to go back to the house to rest. At this point, the neighbors who like to pick up leaks come, and even those who chat and argue with Xiling are quite a few, mostly based on family records. Today is not the same. The person I found has a peach blossom-like face, swaying and swaying as I walk, with a 4-digit mark when I open my mouth. Xian Gu Bing Fong. Lu Xiling smiled knowingly and realized that she was an enemy. The owner of the Xiangu bakery smiled and said, "How's it going? 2,000 yuan is enough, isn't it? Let me guess how much Hu Ernyang gave you, 100 yuan. 200 yuan. 300 yuan will never be more." New book seeking collection and tickets, end of this chapter. Chapter 7. Fried Vegetables. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7 Fried Vegetables. The girl is young, beautiful, and outstanding. What are you doing here? Go to my place, I'll make you a little shopkeeper. There are so many servants under your command. The owner of the Xiangu bakery leaned in, and Lu Xiling didn't refuse either. She only listened to her soft voice and whispered, "My shop is brighter than this, and the pastries are more luxurious than here. The gentleman who went to my place is not a wealthy businessman but also a scholar. If the girl went to my place, she will have face from then on." Why did the little girl come out to show her face? It's either money or a man. Dia's ears were sensitive, and before she could finish speaking, she looked up and met a pair of cunning eyes. The little girl in front of the stall smiled and said, 2,000 yuan, that's quite a lot. The sourness grew, and the bean sprouts buried their heads. She couldn't even dream of earning 2,000 yuan by working for someone. How could this destitute young lady be so lucky to meet all the nobles? She must be eager to run away now, beautiful women are just unreliable. But it's good if she left. Hu Ernyang is becoming increasingly dissatisfied with herself now. With this money tree around, she probably is thinking about how to sell her. The money tree is gone, although there is no food to eat, there is no need to worry about food and clothing. Slowly, the little girl's eyes became bright again. How long can you give me 2,000 yuan? A proud smile froze on her face, and the landlady snapped back to her senses. The girl across from her gestured and said, Song Gongzi, Li Dalong, and Lord Push. I remember these were all regular customers of your store. They've been coming to your store every day lately. Is the boss lady interested in my people or my skills? Lu Xiling directly exposed, according to the boss lady, she should be interested in me. Unfortunately, it's hard to control the cooking and food. If one day I accidentally start a fire, the boss lady won't lose anything, I'm afraid I'll lose both my people and money. The flower petals on her forehead were wrinkled into a ball, and the landlady couldn't believe what she had heard. Upon hearing that Lu Xiling was deliberately mocking her, the owner of the Jinghua bakery gave a laugh, as if preserving her last dignity. Youth and beauty are fleeting. If the girl doesn't take advantage of her peach and plum years to find a good place to go, she will be buried in the smoke all day long. In the future, she may inevitably suffer. I've found it. Lu Xiling chuckled in frustration, when I've earned enough money, I'll open a shop and buy a property. As women, we just need to be good to ourselves. Money is in our own hands, and when the time comes, we won't be able to buy anything. Why bother washing our hands and making soup for men? Is this the truth? Said the landlady. Still embarrassed. The little girl is not very old, she has a lot of flower bellies. The owner of the Jinghua bakery let out a soft sneer, her face turning black and blue, and she almost didn't want her face anymore. Girls have big ambitions, and we can't compare to ordinary people. However, I advise you, if you want to earn money and maintain your reputation with Hupisho, wait for the next life. With a distant cold snort, the woman shook off her cloth and turned her head before leaving. Duya couldn't calm down for a moment as she watched Lu Xiling, who had won the first battle. Lu Xiling hummed a tune and pinched the little girl's face. She picked up the steamer and happily walked back, saying, "Let's go. Sister, go back to the house and cook something delicious for you." Due to the good sales of the two cakes, Huernyang no longer has strict supervision over food and clothing. Eating was something that Lu Xiling had already figured out last night. Fried food. As usual, Duya stood in front of the firewood girl, but this time she not only waited to eat, but also learned to observe. Early in the morning, she noticed the barbed wire under the oilcloth, but got up in a hurry and her stomach was empty. She had no mood to lift the curtain and explore. At present, Lu Xiling revealed the secret in front of her, and it turned out to be a seasonal vegetable skewered with bamboo sticks. Mushrooms, cabbage, shepherd's purse, tofu skin. The tofu skin is different from the usual ones, rolled up, with a small pinch of coriander in each roll. In the homes of ordinary people, oil is also precious. After using 2 pounds of oil, Lu Xiling felt embarrassed to mix it with meat. Fearing that the children wouldn't like it, Lu Xiling took an opportunity to sneak a glance. Unexpectedly, Duya's round and dripping eyes were like piercing into her secret sauce. As soon as her timid little finger pressed against the surface of the red oil, she swooped back and pursed it in her mouth, her eyes narrowing into a slit. Lu Xiling smiled and ignored her, lifting out the iron plate on the other side. Although Huernyang was not good at cooking, she was also a foodie and had all the kitchen utensils at home. Lu Xiling flipped it over and placed it on the charcoal fire in the yard. The kitchen is small, and the fried food is covered in smoke and dust, which cannot be dispersed for a while. The backyard is much more spacious, making it convenient to use. On one side of the charcoal fire, oil was burning, and her slender fingers probed the oil temperature back and forth on the oil pan. On the other side of the iron plate, there was a sizzling sound. Lu Xiling scooped a small spoonful of batter and poured it on top, using bamboo chopsticks to scrape the edges flat. With a slight flip, the batter quickly turned into a clear pancake. This pancake was spread out on the plate, and the fried food from the other end was poured into the pot, causing oil splashes to immediately appear in the pot. I can't handle the movements in front of me, just looking at Duya makes me feel surprised. When she thought this should be the same way to eat lamb soup and meat patties outside, Lu Xiling once again surprised her. The fried food was picked onto the pancake with bamboo chopsticks, coated with sauce, and then stacked with a fresh lettuce leaf. The front and back were wrapped together into a pancake. The sauce just now had already made the little girl want to be immortal and drunk. This time, with the addition of fragrant fried food, the bean sprouts immediately became restless without saying a word. When the cook saw joy. In fact, this little girl is not only narrow-minded, but also very good. The key is that she is not picky about food and can eat with herself. The things made by the girl are really clean and delicious. Strange, is this praising her? Upon closer reflection, it seems like Duya is taking the initiative to talk to herself for the first time. Lu Xiling smiled lightly and said, "If you like to eat, in the future, when we have money, I will make a different style for you every day." Duya looked at Lu Xiling with a curious expression, holding her mouth full of sauce. After a while, she lowered her head again in the other person's enthusiastic gaze. "Miss, don't make me happy anymore. I'm afraid even if I work hard for a lifetime, I won't earn 2,000 yuan. So she heard it all. It's amazing. Can a rectal temper be buried in her heart for so long after hearing sour words? Adolescent girls are really sensitive and cute. How can't we make a profit? Isn't it me now? When we become stronger and bigger, everyone will mention the pastry shops in the capital, only knowing that the beauty doesn't know the fairy." Duya let out a puff, revealing a smile of making a living sauce. Wiping off the grease from his mouth, Duya hesitated and said, "I just saw that you've turned Sun Xingu's face green. I really admire you." Lu Xiling was taken aback. So the little girl was so handsome by her backbone that she didn't bow down for 5 demi. But she is not yet so noble as not to be swayed by gold and silver. She simply resists talking to men, as she can become a wealthy family with her strength. Lu Xiling smiled and said, "Let's wait. In less than a year, our family will definitely surpass hers." No one believes such grandiose words, but Duya believes them. Not to mention pastries, even if Lu Xiling says she can open the most popular restaurant, she still believes it. Duya went straight up and down, saying whatever came to her mind. "But you have such ability. It's really a pity not to go to Xingu. You didn't know that Hu Enyang used to work in a fruit shop with Sun Xingu, which was very popular in the capital for a while." The more Duya spoke, the quieter her voice became. When she arrived, she gave Lu Xiling a small look of, I know. Perhaps there is no one in the yard, but when gossip is spoken out loud, it changes its flavor. Moreover, the little girl is willing to accept her, and if she doesn't take over, she seems to be pretending to be aloof. So he leaned in. "Why did Hu Enyang come out to work alone?" asked Lu Xiling. Duya let out a loud growl, like an old man who had seen through the world, and slowly said, "Why else? Because of men." Lu Xiling took a deep breath. Is it the dog-blood complex of fire prevention, theft prevention, and best friend? Is her landlady still a romantic brain? On this side, Lu Xiling happily chatted with Duya about other people's gossip, but little did she know that someone on the other side of the city was also angrily chatting about her gossip. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Chatting Bagua. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Chatting Bagua. Along the banks of the Luo River, Inga is gorgeous. Following the Yangzhou tune, one can enter the famous pear garden, orchid garden, in the capital. On weekdays, I would open the door to welcome guests at noon and sing until the night fell. Today, the deep red aconitum gate was tightly closed, and the sign standing at the door prominently read, "Thank you today." But if there is a trustworthy person objectively lying on the wall eavesdropping, one can still hear the gentle singing of Qianhong Night Moon inside. By the Lotus Pond. The sound of silk, bamboo, wind, and strings on the stage rises one after another, and the singing voice of the leader moves people gently. Under the stage, the 3 princes of the current dynasty each had their own thoughts. After finishing the song, the little princess wearing a peony-colored Sichuan brocade pomegranate skirt spoke up first, "It's really boring. It turns out that the old man of the late emperor likes to listen to this soft and melodious tune all day long, which is far inferior to the chong drums in Dibei. Tsk, no wonder their soldiers are all soft persimmons. The servant pouring tea was so frightened that his hands trembled. The defeat of Bingjia is not due to Chu Zi's credit, it's all because our second brother has trained well. Third Prince Baizhu glanced at the person on the adjacent seat and admired, if it weren't for the fact that our second brother deliberately trained the young dogs of the Forbidden Army in those years, our iron cavalry would not have been so easy to attack the city. The little princess Bai Fengji, who was still feeling embarrassed the moment before, heard these words and instinctively looked at her second brother Bai Yi sitting in the room. Bai Yexing is handsome and sharp, with a sharp and fierce sword eyebrow. When talking to others, his eyes are raised, carrying an irresistible frivolity and promiscuity. But that was when he was in a good mood. If you are in a bad mood, you will appear the same, closing your eyes and not speaking, like a Shura king who can draw a sword at any time. Bai Fengji remembered the years and she parted ways with her second brother and pursed her lips in pain. Anyone who has endured humiliation under the enemy's feet for 3 or 4 years will not be in a good mood, let alone facing an arrogant and domineering county lord's wife every day. Brother San, what a pot you can't open and pick up. Bai Fengji took a glance at Bai Zhu and saw that the other party didn't care at all. She resentfully picked up the pastry and took a bite. Hey! In an instant, the bright little princess bent her apricot eyes and looked at the pastry, as if she was trying to determine something. She then tentatively took 2 more bites. Just as he was about to take his last bite, Bai Zhu interrupted with a smile, "What's going on? Could it be that the Jiangnan tune was appetizing for my sister?" Bai Fengji snorted lightly, picked up the plate and smiled at Bai Yi, saying, "Second brother hasn't eaten anything in a day. Try this fruit quickly. It's really delicious. It's even better than the jujube paste cake you brought back." "Forget it, my second brother has been eating all these things these years, he's already tired of it." Before finishing his Bai Zhu words, he saw that his sister's eyes were about to pop out, so he lightly closed his mouth. Bai Yi leaned his forehead against his long finger, showing no interest in their playfulness. The refugees in the city need to be resettled, and the stereotypical impression of Dibei by the people needs to be reversed. There are also complaints about uneven grain taxes in various prefectures waiting to be resolved. The fourth son is also not good at reconciliation, and the strategy of petition and pacification may leave lingering troubles. There was no laughter in his ear, he clearly felt it was noise. The man sitting in the middle suddenly opened his eyes, and the 2 young people laughing and frolicking on both sides were immediately frightened into silence. "I'll go back to the palace first, you guys keep going. The leader only spoke up today, and the second brother is leaving." Bai Fengji felt 10,000 unwillingness and lifted her buttocks, wanting to leave someone to reunite and have a happy time together. When she stumbled to her feet, she didn't even grab a sleeve. Looking up, she saw Bai Yi strode towards the outside of the garden. Bai Zhu has a pure temperament, and when he sees his sister feeling down, he can't bear to laugh at her anymore. He just wants to change ways to make people happy. As a result, my heart was as big as Bai Fengji's. A while ago, I even pursed my mouth, and when I tried to eat the fruit, my eyes lit up and I smiled. While laughing and praising, he said, "It's really delicious, shopkeeper. What's the name of this fruit? Let's change it to Shangshi Bureau and make some." The person in charge of lawn garden has a friendly and round face, and is very kind and easy to talk to. In addition, he has seen more than 100 royal relatives and relatives in recent years, making the scene more overwhelming than the people below him. "This is called hibiscus cake, it's a new sample from Xiamen Garden." Bai Fengji nodded. After savoring the crispy and sweet taste, I couldn't help but murmur, "Fu, Rong, Gao, good name, really light and full like lotus, full of fragrance in my mouth." The host crouched down and offered a friendly gesture, saying, "If the princess likes it, she will come more into the Xiamen Garden in the future." Bai Fengji raised her eyebrows slightly and said, "No need, tell me the recipe, and I will instruct the imperial chef to make it later." Sitting beside him, Baizhu couldn't help but laugh and said, cutting off one's financial path is like killing one's parents. The shopkeeper clearly doesn't want to tell you the recipe, can't you hear it? Bai Fengji's gaze came over. The person in charge blushed and smiled. Your Highness misunderstood. The princess asked, how can I hide it? It's just that I don't have any recipe for this pastry. To be honest with both your highnesses, the master of the white case in the Xiaoman family returned to his hometown last month. Now, Xiaoman is also negotiating a deal with the fruit shop outside. Which fruit shop? Baizhu shook his head helplessly. His younger sister is always seeking truth in everything and likes to break through the sand pot and ask the truth. But this time the person in charge really couldn't answer. He was in charge of the entire garden, and there were about 100 people waiting for him to worry about his labor. How could he still care about so many things? Fortunately, the little princess didn't continue to make things difficult for him, but she asked him to come back and say hello to the butler later. The new emperor and new rules are impossible, and the officials can only adapt. After wiping off her sweat and going back, Bai Fengji ate the fruit and remembered the past. Now that her second brother is not here, she needs to calculate the old accounts carefully. Third brother, don't mention the past life again. Second brother will feel uncomfortable listening to it. Bai Fengji said, especially the county lord of the former empress's family. That's your sister. In law. Former sister. In law. Bai Fengji said. The upper beam is not upright and the lower beam is crooked. The late emperor was incompetent, and the late empress was spendthrift. The girls they selected were afraid to be 108,000 miles away from Duanshuxian. The key is that she once spread rumors of her second brother's domestic violence everywhere. Maybe that woman is arrogant, stubborn, and clings to second brother, so second brother accidentally made a mistake. Impossible. Bai Fengji cut off the railway with her nails. Although second brother has a fierce temper and looks fierce, he is not easy to get along with strangers, but he will never hit a woman. The more Bai Fengji spoke, the more she felt that it was just that. That woman must have listened to the instigation of the late emperor and deliberately wanted to ruin the reputation of our Bai family. Now she has succeeded. Everyone in the capital thinks that our Dibei Erlang is ferocious and that no noble daughter dares to marry the royal family. How can you conclude that she's not a good girl? You haven't seen her before. That's because she runs fast. Bai Fengji said, she's smart about this. She knows we can't spare her, and she doesn't dare to make meaningless entanglements and leave. I hope she will only sincerely worship the Buddha in the future, let the Buddha bless her, and don't let her meet me. Baizhu doted on his sister and smiled helplessly. Speaking of the preface, he actually felt that not getting married was not a big deal. The brothers could still be carefree for a few years. When they got married and were granted a fiefdom, they had to go their separate ways. Moss Flower was young and never returned. Little sister, the emperor is not in a hurry, the eunuch is in a hurry. Baizhu couldn't help but joke, are you really worried about your brothers, little sister? Or are you afraid that we won't be able to marry a wife for a day, and you won't be able to find your father to marry you for a day? Brother. Bai Fengji's ear turned red. Don't talk nonsense. Picking up the fruit and stuffing it into her mouth, Bai Fengji waved her small hand and suddenly the garden was filled with Qin and Essie playing. The spicy taste on the face was instantly washed away by the sweet taste, and the beating heart seemed to be masked by the wonderful sound. Baizhu nodded at Bai Fengji with a greedy expression on her face, feeling embarrassed to continue exposing her. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Peach Blossom Cuisine. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 Peach Blossom Cuisine. The good news arrived at the beauty fruit shop the next day. Hu Enyang escorted the dining room master from Lan Yuan with her front foot, and as soon as she locked the silver into the warehouse with her back foot, she eagerly conveyed it to Lu Xiling. Lu Xiling lazily responded twice and collapsed into a big character on the bed. Last night, it seemed like a silent spring rain, and the sky outside the window was still foggy. The eaves were dripping, and the mottled buds reflected the stretching light and shadow. The peach blossoms have bloomed. Spring is coming soon. Wrapped in a small quilt, Lu Xiling flipped over comfortably, hoping for a miracle to happen. She still insisted on checking in every day and flipped through the system twice. In the ancient recipe, there is a crystal shrimp cake, with 7 parts shrimp meat and 3 parts lard, finely chopped, and added with white pepper and thickened powder. I can't remember the rest clearly, but can only vaguely recall the warm and jade-like taste on the tongue, as well as the soft and crispy aroma. Lu Xiling felt quite regretful. It would be great if the system could be activated during the spring break. As a member of her by family, it's not just a matter of her giving orders for astragalus and white shrimp. Ah! Goodbye to the life of Lady Jiangnan. Ah Ling, get up quickly. Nyang said to close the shop for a day today and lead us up the mountain to pick mushrooms. That's it. Lu Xiling remembered the staircase outside the office in her past life, which could be called a small gossip exchange corner. The friendship between Jime began to sprout from a small gossip in the staircase. Duya and she are the same. Especially after she threatened to make a fortune with bean sprouts, this straightforward girl recognized her. After grooming, take a quick bite, change into coarse cloth clothes, and the 3 of them will set off. After the drizzle, the suburban road was muddy, and Nyang flipped out the soap boots at the bottom of the box to put on for the 2 of them. Duya people have small feet, but they are not small. Nyang's shoes are just right on her feet, but it's Lu Xiling. Her feet are thin and thin, like a little child who stole adult shoes. Her ankle needs to be tightened before she can walk steadily. As soon as they arrived at the woods in the suburbs, hazel mushrooms were everywhere, and Lu Xiling and Duya completely scattered their joy. Silly girl, picking mushrooms. What are you always picking flowers and plants for? Those weeds are not worth anything. Hu Ernyang weighed the bamboo basket behind her and showed it to Lu Xiling. Look. I've picked so much, even foolish maids pick more than you. Duya has long been accustomed to Hu Ernyang's disdain, and at this moment, she does not retort. She is completely immersed in the joy of picking mushrooms, or rather immersed in mushroom soup, mushroom stir-fried shredded meat, mushroom stewed lamb and other mushroom series delicacies. Lu Xiling smiled and folded a few peach blossoms, then turned around to pick Chinese tunes. Cheap returns cheap, but what's the point of just eating mushrooms? Moreover, it's already the Shaanxi festival, and it's my daughter's holiday. How can I do without the scorching peach blossoms? Hu Ernyang stood up straight and clapped her hands, saying, yes. We'll do as you say this time. Go set up a stall at the bridgehead. Lu Xiling stood under the locust tree and looked back with a smile, not only a stall, but also a few pastries with good appearance and taste. Drinks are also indispensable. We should strive to take advantage of the Shaanxi festival to boost our reputation. Last night, as soon as Hu Ernyang returned, her aunt, who was selling flowers next door, chatted with her and praised her young man for his intelligence and righteousness. Humph, she folded on Sun Xiangu once, can she still fold it again? She didn't misjudge anyone. Lu Xiling is someone worth trusting. If the guy can still do this, she, as the boss lady, can't hold back any longer. It's just that besides being able to give her processing money, there are too few other things she can handle. She only knows how to make those 3 types of pastries. Step by step, step by step. Nyang wants to learn, I'll teach you later. Don't do it. Hu Ernyang didn't love learning from the bottom of her heart. Why don't you teach Duya? She can also help you if she learns. I got it, I don't have time for dating. Lu Xiling saw through it but didn't say it out loud. She only heard Hu Ernyang shift the topic and say, I'm afraid we won't be able to keep up with our busy schedule. The hibiscus cake in Lanyuan needs to be added to the list, and we have to go out for sale on the Shaanxi festival. Can we just rely on the three of us? At this point, she didn't mind bean sprouts anymore. At least she spent money to buy it, and it was also second-hand when sold. She didn't like to do business that was losing money, so she decided not to use it for nothing. Why not? The hibiscus cake can last for at most 5 days, and if it's too much, it won't be fresh anymore. Just give it a quantity of 5 days in advance. What can't we do during these 5 days? Lu Xiling smiled. It was true that there were no poor people, only lazy people. Upon hearing these words, Hu Enyang knew that Lu Xiling had a plan in her heart and didn't ask further. As for what to eat and drink during the Shaanxi festival, she was completely not worried. Judging from her previous 2 tasting experiences, Lu Xiling's eating will definitely not disappoint her. Disappointment is certainly not possible, but this is the first time in her life that Lu Xiling has been competing for business in front of her peers. She can despise her opponents, but she must not underestimate them. If you want to crush your peers, the first priority is to analyze the market. Although you are usually foolish, you can actually pretend to be in your heart. Leave this matter to her and it will never arouse suspicion from your family. As for Lu Xiling, she has a more important task. To study dishes. What kind of pastries do daughters like? Of course, that is something that can be aesthetically pleasing, has a sweet taste, and is easy to handle. Today she has gained a lot, with several peach blossoms, apricot blossoms, and begonia flowers folded. Spring flowers can not only be used for scenery, but also for food. Just take peach blossom as an example, there are too many dishes that can be made. The mashed petals and soft white sugar stains can be used to make peach blossom bittern in the vat. The bittern is wrapped with lard pastry, which is a proper peach blossom cake. Wrapped with glutinous rice cakes, it is a creamy white and soft snow mignon. Melted in milk, it is peach blossom soup. In addition, peach blossoms can also be used as embellishments, such as wine brewed yam cakes, and the upcoming green dumplings. The pastry skin is covered with peach blossom petals, which are beautiful and elegant. The ancient said, drinking the dew of magnolia in the morning and the falling petals of autumn chrysanthemums during the evening meal. It is not the first time that eating flowers is like this, and to stand out, one must also add points in taste. Lu Xiling picked out a few pieces of the prepared pastry and placed them on a celadone plate to prevent Hu Enyang and Duya from having a food filter on her. This time, she planned to bring them to the neighboring aunt who knew how to taste the flowers. Aunt Li's flower shop has fewer individual customers and more orders. The shop is decorated with pink walls, green tiles, and flower fences, with a garden-style layout that emphasizes petty bourgeoisie and comfort. At present, there was no one in the shop. Aunt Li greeted Lu Xiling and sat down against the elegant seat of wisteria. She turned her head and brewed a pot of tea. The two of them enjoyed the street view sprinkled by the sunset while tasting new products, which had a certain virtue of whispering around the stove. Wow, girl, this pastry is so exquisite. Since eating the jujube paste cake made by Lu Xiling, Aunt Li has become a regular customer at the fruit shop. During the conversation, she learned that she has been to many places and seen many scenery. There is less business atmosphere and more interesting things in her conversation. Lu Xiling likes to chat with her. Auntie, give it a try. If there are any negative aspects, be sure to speak frankly. Aunt Li's eyes curled up in a beautiful shape, and she didn't want to ruin the beauty by taking a bite. Lu Xiling introduced, the cheese my aunt ate is called shui meinyang. I'm afraid men don't like sweetness, so I made 2 flavors. Peach blossom and bean paste. In the fruit tray, petals are pasted on the glutinous rice dumpling of peach blossom, and red beans are pasted on the glutinous rice dumpling of red bean soup. Aunt Li is no longer a girl. She is uncomfortable with too many sweet teeth and her stomach. She prefers red bean soup stuffing and can't stop eating. Surprisingly, other people also have red bean soup. Why can't it be as delicate and dense as yours? Lu Xiling also didn't hide. Slow work makes fine work. My red bean was first boiled in a large pot for 2 hours, and then sieved twice with steamer gauze when it cooled down. Aunt Li was shocked and said, "No wonder you put a lot of effort into it." Thank you to Tai 40 for drinking half a cup of tea and Sun Yishianhuo for casting the recommended votes in anticipation of the rising sun, new book seeking collection, comments, and votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 10. Ordering dishes. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Ordering dishes. When it comes to the taste of Qingsha, Aunt Li remembers traveling around Qingzhou in her youth, and the bean paste buns made at a small tavern on the post road were particularly delicious. The shop owner peeled the red beans, washed them repeatedly, and let them stand still. The next day, they steamed them and mixed them with white sugar. The warm aroma of the red beans and the sweet aroma of white sugar blended and collided. Finally, they were slowly cooked in a clay pot over low heat. This slowly combined taste is sweet but not greasy, and it is unforgettable. That shopkeeper has really developed a good personality, sighed Lu Xiling with admiration. In the previous life, there were pressure cookers and wall-breaking machines in the private kitchen, but she was still overwhelmed by the clear sand. The owner of the shop made the red bean sauce that Aunt Li has never forgotten for 20 years with his hands, which is really impressive. Miss, you have a good temperament. Shui Meinyang is exquisite and pleasing. She will definitely be able to sell for a good price in Shaanxi. Lu Xiling bowed back and said, with the bustling flower lady in the capital guarding the little girl, Shui Meinyang will never break her face. The two of them laughed together. After praising each other for a while, Lu Xiling introduced the remaining pastries to Aunt Li, including apricot blossom cake, yam peach blossom cake, and mugwort dumpling to prepare for the Qingming festival. Aunt Li tasted it all and even praised the color, aroma, and flavor of the fruit, which was sure to win the favor of the diners. Just. Aunt Li thought for a moment and suggested, the fruit tastes good, but the name is not very satisfactory. She pointed to her own flower and said, for example, my family's crabapple. When I introduce it to guests, I can't just call it crabapple, I have to call it rich and noble crabapple. Your fruit also means the same. On the Shaanxi festival, most of the people who play by the Luoshui Bridge are young masters and ladies from the High Gate courtyard. While the name Shui Meinyang may sound interesting, it doesn't really suit the preferences of literati and scholars, Lu Xiling suddenly realized. The matter of naming was due to her lack of consideration and her failure to assert and handle things from the perspective of the ancients. Aunt Li is right. Since she has a mid to high-end positioning for her fruit, the noble ladies in the High Gate courtyard are naturally her consumer group. Only by catering to the needs and preferences of the consumer group can they drive their consumption. Lu Xiling looked at Aunt Li with joy. Jiang was still old and spicy, not only commenting on the fruit, but also helping her think of marketing strategies. It's just a name, it won't be difficult for Lu Xiling. Although most of the knowledge learned in the Imperial Academy's Guizijian was given as sacrificial wine, fortunately our foundation is not bad. The food was settled, and the two of them started talking about drinks again. Peach blossom soup is indispensable, and Lu Xiling has already decided. Peach blossom snow meinyang and peach blossom soup are bundled into a set meal. As long as the price is reasonable, it is not easy to overstock inventory in the later stage. Aunt Li nodded and said, the spring festival is dry, so you still need to prepare some nourishing drinks. It's best to also nourish the liver and improve eyesight. I believe that many people believe in me, and it is good for health. Lu Xiling also decided to adopt this suggestion. When the discussion is almost over, Lu Xiling is also preparing to bid farewell. Shaanxi is approaching, and she still needs to make drinks when she goes back. Aunt Li doesn't intend to keep her any longer. In the past, both of them said they would part ways, adhering to the principle that friendship between gentlemen is as simple as water. But this time, Lu Xiling clearly saw that Aunt Li was hiding something in her heart, and her eyebrows were almost twisted into a ball. Auntie, if you have something to say in your heart, let's talk. We can't stop being outsiders. If we do, I won't be able to let Auntie taste the dishes in the future. Auntie has rarely asked anyone for help, even her neighbors who have been with her for many years. She is unwilling to trouble anyone at all. Today, she was truly captivated by the delicious food. Aunt Li apologized. Actually, it's not a big deal. If you're busy, just pretend I haven't mentioned it. Lu Xiling smiled and pulled the person down again, saying, Auntie, speak quickly. Aunt Li coughed lightly and recounted the whole story. Didn't you say before that you were planning to set up a stall at the temple fair during the bathing Buddha festival? Coincidentally, Fan Temple was hosting the ceremony that day, and his abbot was familiar with me. A month ago, he asked me to help find a white table master. Every year in the temple, incense is held to form a bond and hold a fasting ceremony. The esteemed people who enter the temple recite scriptures and pay knowing how to print money, for their meals. Some who stay overnight also pay an additional, hanging bill money. However, not all temples are full of incense. How many noble people can attract to offer incense money? The taste of Buddhist food is very important. I've tried many places in the past few days, but I can't keep up with what you did today. I can't find it anymore, and it's hard to push the abbot's request. Thinking of this, Aunt Li felt embarrassed and shouldn't have agreed so decisively at that time. Lu Xiling nodded clearly. Okay. Aunt Li's voice became weaker and weaker as she spoke, completely immersed in her own troubles. Upon hearing the other person's answer, she thought she was listening poorly. What did you say earlier? Lu Xiling smiled and said, I said I'll go back and ask Qianhong first, but I think Qianhong should agree. She has been brainwashing Qianhong a lot lately. Xiaoji uses emotions and small amounts of money, and after a few attempts, Qianhong's desire to make money has become even more intense than before. Afraid that Lu Xiling's mind might heat up, she readily agreed. Aunt Li quickly reminded, don't rush to answer me yet. You can go back and think about it. At most, the temple can give you a flower basket money. That silver will be light and easy to carry. I'm afraid you won't even have enough money for your hard work. Lu Xiling's pear nest is shallow. If you don't tighten it, consider it as doing good deeds and forming good relationships. By the way, you can also promote it more in front of the nobility. Fan Temple is a large temple worshipped by various officials in the capital. Every year, women from the Qi family of the imperial family add incense money and shape golden bodies to the temple, and its grandeur is unparalleled compared to temple fairs. This bathing Buddha festival is probably no exception. Aunt Li, this is not asking her to handle things. It's clear that the fat and water don't flow into the fields of outsiders. After discussing a win-win outcome, Lu Xiling really can't stay any longer. Qianhong came back late today, and there is still a bean sprout waiting to be fed at home. Aunt Li happily escorted the person out of the door. Going home is only about 10 steps away, and in the blink of an eye, Lu Xiling has arrived home. Just as the evening drums were beating out, a drizzle began to fall from the sky. The drizzle was silent as the rolling wheels passed by. The man in the carriage, who was originally leaning against the wall to rest, seemed to remember something when he arrived. His calloused thumb gently lifted the curtains. There are few pedestrians on the street, the wind lights flicker, and the thick mist rising from the ground resembles an indelible distant mountain. He saw Linglong's back bouncing towards the shop, and his eyebrows twitched uncontrollably. Poisonous wine is the last honor that the father bestowed upon his cousin, the late emperor. Not killing the idol in the palace is also the last virtue that the father bestowed upon the Lu family with hairpins and tassels. But her aunt, relatives, and those who may threaten the throne of the Bai family were all sent back to Shu, leaving her alone. The curtain fell down like a breath, and Bai Yi sneered. This person is truly ruthless. She looks so happy now, doesn't she miss her cousin who is considerate, caring for her, has been caring for her for many years, and thinks of her like crazy. End of this chapter.